Once we had everything all cut out, it was time to cut the doors, and you get one shot at it. 2 months of weekend labor and $3 grand, and you got yourself a party on wheels. I went real minimal on this. I think my favorite feature of all is this. And we kind of made it up as we went along. My name is Philip Gershwin, and my son and I built this teardrop from scratch in 26 days for a little under $3 grand. Why don't you come with me and we'll take a tour. When my son and I decided to make this, we had a lot of aspects to it that were going to make it unique. We wanted it to be a 5x10, so we had the custom order, the birch Baltic plywood. We wanted to make it a full curve instead of flat to make it a little bit more attractive, make it a little bit more aerodynamic, and to give us actually a little bit more room in front. Every inch matters. And my son pressed for this circular door, which everyone feels is the coolest thing about it. Once we had everything all cut out, it was time to cut the doors, and you get one shot at it. We blow the doors, we got to throw it away and special order more plywood. So we made like a giant compass out of a 2x4, mounted the router, pegged it in the center, and just slowly went around, lowered it, went around, lowered it, until we got a perfect cut. And I couldn't be happier with the way it came out. And then we were able to put a circular window in here, the custom forged hinges, got a strap for ending it. One thing is, it was kind of tricky finding out how to lock it, so I ended up using these locks, which are from a standard cabinet, but they work just fine. Now this is grade A Baltic birch. It's very expensive because it has 0 voids. It's 1 inch thick. If you look at the edges, sometimes when you see a piece of plywood, you cut it in half, there's these big gaps in it, or these little triangular or oval stamps where they had to patch it. This is absolutely clean end to end. We wanted to leave it as natural as possible, so we just put a little bit of natural stain just to get a little yellow tone to it, and then we used marine sealer on it. What we didn't appreciate was that was something that would need to be redone every year or two. Being left out in the hot sun, we started to weather down. One day I might sand it all down and start over again. More likely I'll just drive it off into the sunset this way. Woodworking is one of my primary hobbies, going all the way back to growing up with my dad. We built an extension to our house back in Long Island. I started building kayaks with my son at some point. And when I started doing these archery events and we were going to all these camping events, as I got older, I was getting more and more tired of sleeping in a tent on the ground. And then there was this one event, and it was pouring rain, and my tent flooded, and it was very sad. And a friend of ours had built a teardrop, a big ass one that they used for a trip to Alaska, and they were not soaking wet, sleeping in a puddle. So when I came back from that trip, I started talking about it and talking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. And Sam finally said, why don't you just shut up and make it? Let's do it together as a project. And we went for it. We ordered the trailer, it came in, we built it, and we were then what they referred to as pot committed. We had to get it done. And with every step, it was more and more of a, are we really gonna be able to do this? Well, we don't have a choice. We have to do this now. So come in and let's check this out for a bit. Although it can fit very comfortably a full-size mattress when 2 people are sleeping, I am almost always in here alone, so I just have a little single mattress that folds up, gives me a little floor space, makes it feel more like an apartment. I've got my control panel over here that gives me my voltage. It has my ceiling fan set up, and we have strip lights going on to light the whole place up. I've got USB here, I have USB here, I have USB there, I have USB there. I've got the basic cigarette lighter ones, which I got to use for this inverter so that I can plug in AC, which I almost never need to. When I mentioned Most people would have it a straight edge, and I decided to make it bow out. That gave me this perfect little storage in here where I can keep all my sheeting and miscellaneous stuff, including my solar panels that I add on to the battery. So all across the top, we were able to use this very thin 1/8 inch Baltic birch that matched the other wood, so it looks like one continuous piece. Really love the way that came out. Really into the hooks, because it's a small little area, so there's hooks and there's hooks and there's hooks and there's hooks and there's hooks. I also had this left over from an old project that got retired, so it becomes my little nightstand with some bungee in here so I can keep stuffing my laundry in it. When it's a hot day, I built this little, fill it with ice water and these fans that's DC voltage, so it gives me an air conditioning. And when it's cold, this actually is very effective. You just put in some votive candles in here. I put it up there. Makes a very nice light and definitely raises the overall interior 3 or 4 degrees, which makes a big difference, especially since we made this so perfectly sealed that when it's completely closed, there's no ventilation. This air thing, the fan blowing, if there's not room for the air to go, it does nothing. So we have to like crack the door a little bit. But I am planning on adding a vent in here so that we can get some air without having to keep the door open. We also have my entertainment center and my theft control system for burglars. If it's late at night, I don't want to get out, I got always one of these. When we put down the base, we had a layer of wood, then we put in the insulation, then we had the next layer of wood, then we sealed that all up and we put this vinyl flooring in. I think we probably spent 40 bucks on that. And basically, other than the cost of the wood, we were determined to make this as inexpensive as possible. We also wanted to do it as quickly as possible because we started it on my birthday in December and I needed to have it ready in April for my first camping event. And we only had weekends to do it in. But 26 days was all we needed. I think my favorite feature of all is this. This little window here, yeah, I've never seen that in another teardrop, and it was just a fluke because this came here, this came there, and we had that gap, and it was like, crap. Am I going to have to get a piece of wood and try and match it? And then it was like, no, let's get a piece of plexiglass and put it over it and make it like a little window. And I love that. And the only other thing I'm thinking of is maybe putting it on a hinge so I can actually open it up, and that would be a great ventilation. But there's always the balance between ventilation and allowing mosquitoes to get in. When we started it on my birthday in December, and we needed to have it, I wanted to have it ready for April, because that was the event where I was trapped in the rain in a tent. And I wanted to have it done by then. I work full-time, Sam works full-time, we only had weekends. And as we were building it, everybody was asking, oh, how long is it gonna take? How much is it gonna cost? So I started a little Excel spreadsheet and we kept track of every hour. And it was a total of 26 days with 2 people working. The total cost was a little under $3,000, and we kind of made it up as we went along. We had a plan, and that plan lasted for the first, 30% of the project, and then it was like, well, this plan isn't going right. We'll just see where it takes us, which is my favorite way to work. This is my entire electrical system. 1 car battery and 2 little clamps that feed in to the main breaker, and that distribution panel brings it to the back and the top and the fan. Couldn't be simpler than that. Other than that, I keep in here my emergency plies like a jack if I have to level it off. I always want to have a spare hitch in case that hitch gets damaged, and I always want to have manual lights in case the electrical goes out. Nothing worse than getting pulled over by a cop because your tail lights aren't working. A big thing was the trailer itself. There were two choices. There was the iron, they're both from Irontron. One was actually steel and one was aluminum. The aluminum was a little more expensive, and it was recommended on the boards because it's a lot lighter and weight is important. You need to keep this under 2,000 pounds, otherwise registering it becomes very difficult. But because of this triangle here, and you put one of these wheels down, the whole thing torques. So I put in these reinforcements. It's still torqued. I put in 2x4s to reinforce it. It's still torqued. It was always a nightmare. I finally just gave up and said, why don't I just put two wheels down? And I wish I had done that 2 years ago, and I wouldn't have been fighting with it every time. Instead of just a standard hitch, I ended up getting something like this because depending on the ground and where I was setting it up, and I'm not driving a truck, I'm driving a consumer vehicle, I needed that type of flexibility. If you've ever had a trailer or a boat or anything like that where you're connecting to the car, getting it lined up so that you can hook this on, luckily if you keep it nice and light like mine, you only have to get in the ballpark and then you can kind of move the teardrop onto it. If it was something too heavy for me to move, then it would take quite a lot of time to line it up perfectly, backing up, going forward. If I'm going on my own and I have no one to help me, it could take maybe 20 minutes, a half an hour to get it lined up because I have to keep stopping, getting out, and stopping and getting out. If I have somebody here just to go like this and go like that, I can have it set up in 10 minutes. It's really just a matter of how many times I have to negotiate the backup to get me close enough to do the hitch. So as far as where I go with this, it hasn't left Southern California yet, but I have 4 trips a year, every year. I have the Gene Foster shoot in Fresno. I have the Chamberlain shoot in Los Avilos. We have the Jenks shoot outside of Big Bear, and we have the Conejo shoot in Simi Valley. The word shoot is archery, traditional archery. My friends and I are all traditional archers. We make our own bows, we make our own arrows, we knap our own points. You know, it's a whole primitive technology thing, so building my own teardrop kind of just dovetailed into that whole experience. And a lot of fun. There have been some stressful moments. Found myself driven down an alley and found myself at a dead end and backing this thing up. That's not an easy thing to do when you're alone. Well, now we get to the fun part, the galley. Because remember, that's just a bed on wheels inside. This is where you hang out. Got my table, my chairs. I went real minimal on this. Lots of people, lots of times you'll see this, they have a built-in stove, they have a built-in sink, and everything's cooking in here. I don't actually want to cook here. I don't want the bugs, the animals, people wanting to go around here. If you have a sink, the sink's just going to drain, you're going to have muddy water here. That's why I have that table in my cooking area. This is just more like my pantry, more like my galley. I put this together, all my fuels, I've got my lights, my power, I've got a light strip here, a light strip here, a light strip here. I've got this old case that's been turned into all my spices and all my cooking equipment. Built these little shelves in here for my radio. The first round of the galley was just this beautiful raw wood, just sealed, but using it the way we did, it got destroyed very quickly, so I got the peel and stick tiles, which I put down here and here. Ended up doing a little bit of a backsplash. In many ways, the galley was the most challenging part because unlike the rest of it, not only was it this curved collection of wood, but it had to be able to move. Believe it or not, putting in these pistons is probably the single most difficult part of the entire build because the math and the angles and the geometry that they give you in the instructions is not anything I was capable of deciphering. So we had to just eyeball it. It took 4 or 5 tries, and then we had it perfect. We wanted the pistons, we wanted it to look cool. That's part of the whole joy of this, all these little cute little details. So since, as I said, I don't want to cook directly in here, I normally have either a propane fire pit, or I like to just make a wood fire if I'm allowed to. So I forged a little tripod, and I have my Dutch oven over here so I can cook up stews and soups and stuff. I have my kitchen table over there with the integrated sink and cutting board, so that's where I bring over my stove and cook for the dinners. I have a little pop-up tent where I put in my little 5-gallon porta potty filled with kitty litter and a few other essentials. We refer to that as our Francis McDormand. It has been very, very meaningful over the years. This is my teardrop, and I'm very proud of it, and I enjoy it, and I hope it lasts as long as I do. As for what's next, that is a very good question. There is a big part of me that wants to sand it down, take it to the next level, all the things like that didn't work out perfectly, I'd love to rework, but there's also the idea of I'm just going to use it the way it is until the day it can't be used anymore. I think the bottom line with this adventure was you don't need to go spend $50,000, get yourself a Sprinter van, remodel it, and have this amazing home on wheels. If you want to just get out there and have adventures, 2 months of weekend labor and $3 grand, and you got yourself a party on wheels. Well, when it's all said and done, this is the most impressive and the most successful thing I've ever built. And forgive me for saying, that's saying quite a lot, because I've built a lot of really awesome things. And if you want to see what my other projects look like, go to Gershwin Woodcraft on YouTube and hit that like button and subscribe. Maybe in about 10 or 15 years, there'll be something new on there. You'll get that bing. I'd really like to thank Tiny Home Tours for giving me the opportunity to show off my workmanship, and I hope to see you guys on the road one day.